DC's absolute power crossover is already a huge shakeup in the DCU with issue number 1, with potential to go much bigger. We'll see what happens. I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. Welcome to Essential Issues Weekly, where I talk about DC Comics 1 week after their release on the Ultra tier of the DC Universe Infinite subscription service. In each installment, I pick an assortment of comics to talk about as a DC fan and also explore what, if anything, they have to say about the essential issues of real life. Now, warning, full spoilers for everything I talk about. First and only warning right here that many spoilers lie ahead. Right now, we're taking a look at comics originally released to the Ultra tier on July 31st, 2024, originally published July 3rd, 2024. Shazam number 13, I'm going to hurry through these first three, but Shazam number 13, I'm liking where the new writer is kind of taking things. However, it still feels very much geared toward a younger audience, with like talking animals and stuff like that. So, and there's still some jokiness going on that sucks the tension, the stakes out of the situation. I'm going to keep tracking with this. I might not talk about Shazam again for a while. I'm going to keep tracking with this just to kind of see where this story arc goes and if there's a status quo change that makes me lean into this character in this series more than I am right now. But at this point, it's, for my taste, only something I'm going to like skim to keep track of. So that's Shazam number 13. Justice Society number 10. Man, I'm really enjoying this. This is Jeff Johns' return to the Justice Society, and he is playing to his strengths, taking older or forgotten characters and giving a fresh perspective to them. In this issue, he continues using the Legion of Substitute Heroes from the future, which are kind of rejected people that applied for the Legion of Superheroes, but their powers were deemed kind of useless. And so you've got powers that only kind of half work or inconsistently, like Stone Boy, who can turn himself into unbreakable stone, but he is rendered completely immovable during that time. And so he can't exactly do combat or anything. He just turns into a stone statue. And similar kind of powers that, just don't quite work like you would expect them to. But yet, they're kind of being presented as the underdogs here who are potentially going to save the day. And I just love Jeff Johns taking characters that are overlooked or considered silly or cheesy or whatever and finding a core about them that is relatable and that can help me to root for them or at least see something of myself in them. And so the Legion of Substitute Heroes playing just a small role so far. But like another character, Mordru, a classic villain, is, as a younger man, time traveling and hoping to experience reform by joining the Justice Society of America. He wants to kind of reform his evil ways before he starts his evil ways, and he sees an opportunity to do that in this story. And so I just love how it's bringing back characters, villains, heroes from not just past JSA stories, but from the wider DC universe that maybe we haven't thought about in a while, and giving us a reason to take a fresh look at them. So I think this comic book is not coming out monthly. I haven't really been keeping track and doing the math, but I feel like it's only been coming out every other month or every 6 weeks or something. I'm just like, come on. Every time I get to the end of an issue, I'm like, that's it, we're done already. So really enjoyed Justice Society of America number 10, but I am impatient with this book's release schedule. Then Batman number 150. This story is an Absolute Power tie-in, but most of the book is about kind of like the henchman world of Gotham City, and specifically focusing on one henchman who's a new character who, at the end of a previous issue, stumbled upon the Batman's secret identity of Bruce Wayne. And he's realizing, I can totally get a ton of cash for this. I just got to sell it to the right person. But in trying to make money off of this knowledge, he puts himself in a tremendous amount of danger. Meanwhile, we're getting a look at his family life and how he has a family, a wife, and particularly a son who he has neglected for years, and his relationships with them are terrible. And he keeps thinking that the next quick fix, I just got to do this quick fix, make it big, and then I'll provide for my family in the way that I want to, and then I can really invest and, have the kind of family that I want to have. But he's so focused on getting cash and making it big or whatever, that he's missing out on the more important thing of his family. And that's such a relevant theme to all of us who are not criminals, but can get so absorbed in our work, so goal focused, and in our minds tell ourselves, this is for my family. But at the same time, we are sacrificing our relationship with our family members as a result of the things that we are supposedly pursuing on their behalf. And so I think it's a great message in here. And as he has this kind of like final conversation with Batman, the word from Batman in all this, who helps him get out of the mess that he's in, when he's like, what do I do? And Batman simply says, be better. And sometimes that simple message is just the one to focus on. When the journey in front of us to repair the damage that we've done, to try and make up for what we've done, which we really can't at the end of the day, because we should have done the right thing the first time, and then with the time we have today, do new right things instead of making up for missed opportunities before. So, sometimes all we can do is just, what is the next good thing, the next better thing that I can do? And thankfully in Christ, we have forgiveness, at least before God, for those wrongs that we've committed with the others in our lives that we have hurt. It's our responsibility to do everything we can to repair, if we can, those relationships, or at least move them in a better direction than they currently are, And sometimes that is the best thing to just be fixated on is, okay, not the big picture, because it's so overwhelming how far I have fallen short. When I think about this as a dad, as a husband, it becomes overwhelming. And so sometimes what we need to do is just say, okay, I can't solve all that. I can't fix all that. What is the next good thing I can do that would be better than what I will do by default, So I think a really good message in this very different issue of Batman that's not at all Batman focused until toward the end, but a story that I really do appreciate. Okay, but the one I really want to talk about is Absolute Power number 1 of 4. This is the main 4-part series for the big Absolute Power crossover. The first thing that's noteworthy is this opening scene where Superman is stopping a pretty pedestrian crime of thugs with ski masks and guns. One of them kind of gets nervous, fires off a shot at Superman, and actually penetrates his chest, and he sees blood on his hand, and then he plummets, having lost his powers, and is just barely caught. But he is in basically critical condition at this point, and we're like, what in the world? How did this happen? What is going on? Elsewhere, we have Animal Man and his daughter returning from an off-grid camping trip, only to discover that people panic and are angered when they see them and immediately attack them. And like, what in the world? We have, I'm not a controversial hero that I know of, and yet people are suddenly wanting to kill me. Well, what we discover is that Amanda Waller has been using really advanced AI to create fake news footage, fake live quote-unquote footage of superheroes doing all kinds of terrible things everywhere and putting this out there as news. And so the whole world is led to believe that all of the superheroes of the world have just gone dark and evil and are just suddenly a menace to society everywhere. This whole device that Amanda Waller is using, I think, is certainly relevant right now as we're seeing deep fakes and AI being able to create increasingly convincing video of fake trailers for movies that never exist, different things like that. And right now, of course, we can look at this stuff and most people can say, yeah, that looks a little fishy, that looks a little off, that doesn't look real. But I mean, we're also wondering, many of us at the same time, okay, when will it look real? When will it be indistinguishable from reality? Now, as a movie fan, I can't wait for visual effects to get to the point where I cannot tell the difference between a CG actor and a real actor, because then you can do some really cool and completely convincing, crazy sci-fi stuff from an entertainment standpoint. I can't wait for that day. That'll be great. But from a just everyday truth standpoint, I think that we would be also up against the possibility of fake video footage that news companies, news entities are going to have to work all the harder to sift through and verify before they put it out there as news, which is something that actually Lois is struggling with as the editor of the Daily Planet. She says to someone new and kind of not in the right headspace yet at the Planet, you know how the media panics about not being last with the story. They report first, then verify. The planet does not and will not run unverified and speculative content. Is that understood? And of course, we need to demand that of our news organizations. As believers, however, I think it's important that we demand this of ourselves as well. I think there is so much conversation going on online about current events and stuff without enough caveats given in those conversations that I seem to remember. I think maybe. I'm not sure, but, different things like that, that instead of just like saying these really declarative statements as though they are certainly true, and then, just perpetuating what is false information. So I think as we're interacting on social media, different types of platforms, in one-on-one, in-person conversations, it's important that we engage those moments with humility as we're talking about different things going on in the world. And yeah, that includes in this election year when we might not have good things to say about the guy that we, or the gal that we don't plan on voting for, whatever the case may be. Truth needs to be more important than venting whatever we are feeling or getting clicks or engaging in a lively, interesting conversation. Truth has got to be more important than all of those things. And so, of course, we ought to demand that of our news organizations. But as believers, it's our responsibility to demand that of ourselves first. And so I think this comic, if we're willing to let it, can be a good reminder for us to remain humble and really adhere to the truth. As I think about the possibility of this world where AI is so convincing that fake news runs rampant, I also think that character is going to be all the more important for us because, yes, as I said, I think it'll be a cool day for fiction as long as we get online and just say, you know what, I'm not going to believe anything that I see online. I'm just going to treat it all and assume it's all fake. I think news organizations that aren't able to effectively sift through fake news, fake footage, and stuff like that, their viewership is going to go way down. I'm just wondering if more and more people will be more untrustworthy, hopefully, instead of buying into every theory and all that kind of stuff. Hopefully people will be more discerning and by default less trustworthy of what they see online. But what the final result of that I can imagine might be is that our in-person relationships will be all the more important because you can't fake someone standing in front of you. And, I think as far as androids and robots, we're much further away from that than we are from faking stuff convincingly on a digital screen. So I think that having people in our lives that we trust, whose character we can verify because we're living alongside with them, and I think maybe even zooming in on what's happening locally instead of trying to be connected and in the know and have a position and opinion about everything going on all over the world. I mean, for thousands of years, that's not what humans were doing. We were engaged in what was going on in our local communities. That's what we cared about. That's what we were invested in until communication really just injected into the world. And I can't help but wonder if there will be a shift that happens at some point if we're not able to sift through effectively online information and visual stuff like that, if it's going to suddenly become more in-person community that's important. And I think it's important for us as believers to be ready for that, whether that's what actually happens or not. But to really remember, character is a far more valuable currency than actual money. I think just something that I'm pondering right now. Amanda Waller also makes some interesting commentary that I think applies to us if we're not careful. She says, it's unbelievable how wrong the Luthers and Jokers of the world have gotten it all this time. You don't need fear gas to shift public opinion. You don't need telepathic mind control. In a world run in a media echo chamber, and I think maybe she's in some ways referring to the fact that all of our thinking is based on what we are ingesting in terms of media online, or maybe even the fact that we tend to just go to the voices online specifically that we want to, instead of really hearing differing views, differing perspectives and stuff. Whatever she means by that, I think, it's very easy for all of us in different ways to fall into media echo chambers. She says, in a world run in a media echo chamber, no matter how many busloads of nuns Superman saves, you can make an uncomfortably large number of people doubt their own eyes and ears. All you have to do is refine your message into a memorable catchphrase. Superheroes are coming for you. So again, as we get deeper into this election year, I think it's good for us to be on guard. Am I feeling the way I'm feeling because there's a really succinct catchphrase, a really succinct, very tweetable short statement? Are these the kinds of sentiments that are really kind of dominating my thinking, or they're the sentiments that are supposedly informing me about what's going on in the world and what I should think of different people? I think that's a real danger, to get our information and have our thoughts reinforced by just a whole bunch of really short, pithy little statements, instead of really taking the time to sort through what the truth is. Now, what I'm seeing so far in Amanda Waller is a little less complexity than I would like. I think so far she's just easily labeled as villain and evil. There are some legitimate concerns she has, but they're stated too strongly, like superheroes cause more trouble than they fix. They cause more problems than they solve. Well, I think comic book readers, for the most part, would say no, it's that they solve more problems than they cause. But is there all kinds of fallout? Do superheroes ever make the wrong choice? For the sake of an interesting dramatic story, do superheroes ever make the wrong choices and even go down a slightly dark path? I mean, this stuff is happening. So I think that superheroes, it's easy to just think of them as like the ones totally being wronged here, when they are written in stories that function as sort of like savior fantasies or savior metaphors. I think one thing that we like deep down in our core about superhero stories is the idea that someone good and someone strong enough can come along and make the wrong things right. Of course, we love that idea. And so we would want to say to Amanda, no, this is my idea of what a superhero is. It's someone who's strong and does the right thing and makes the wrong things right. But that's not always the role in terms of like how it's leveraged in storytelling that superheroes play. Sometimes they're more like, okay, well, what would we do in their shoes? So it's not about like a savior to look up to. It's like we are putting the story in one case is trying to put us in their shoes and figure out what to do in this moral dilemma. So because superheroes are leveraged thematically and as literary devices in different ways for different purposes, we do have a messy DC universe that, like, if I lived in it, I would be horrified every day knowing that there were all kinds of super beings that at any given moment might turn the building I'm walking into a crater. So that's a terrifying world to think about living in. And I kind of wish, for the sake of moral complexity in this story, that Amanda was representing that really kind of legitimate concern, rather than overstating her case and saying that superheroes cause more problems than they solve. So I'm hoping that by the end of this crossover, we will get some nuance that will ask the reader to say, to think to themselves, okay, maybe this is more complex. Certainly Amanda's not the good guy, but it is more complex. I think superhero stories, that's one thing they can do that's really valuable, is give us reasons to sort through nuanced moral issues. So we'll see if they allow room for that and make room for that in the remaining 3 issues of this crossover. Something that is really cool, though, about this story, just from a dramatic standpoint, is Batman's realization that, oh my gosh, Amanda has won this. He just kind of realizes at some point, Waller is like being public, making public announcements about what is going on and how she's going to help save people from the superheroes. She's never made herself this public before, this public facing before. She always prefers to operate in the shadows. And so Batman says Waller would never go this route unless she thinks she's already won. And Batman then in that moment realizes, oh man, that means there's stuff going on in her plans that I actually have not accounted for. I thought I was playing chess with her, he says later, but she's not playing chess. She's rolling out the tanks. I mean, like, she's just ready to brute force this thing because she's already done all the thinking. It's over. And the degree to which she is effective is really staggering. She has made deals with other aliens and presumably supernatural entities so that even like the supernatural characters like Spectre and Dr. Fate, who you would think, oh, well, they can't just use Amazo androids or whatever tech she's using to take their powers away. It's not just a one-prong attack. She has been lining up all kinds of things to bring about the same effect, which is taking all superpowered beings off of the board. And then to amp up the threat even more, Green Arrow, who I'll come back to I think in a second here, is explaining to his former allies, because he's now allied with Amanda Waller. He says, I know you guys, you're thinking we fought Amazos before. If we can figure out how to destroy them, our powers will be restored and we can win. Sorry, those are the old rules. This is a new design, new technology. What's taken is irretrievable. There is no return mechanism. Basically, he says, your powers are gone for good, including like Batman's resources, the cave he no longer has access to. So like all of this is irretrievable. Now, if that were really true, then DC would shut down. They wouldn't sell any more comics, you know? So we know it's going to be reversible in some way. But to make that point here does up the stakes and the sense of drama, like, oh, and it also sets up an expectation for me, like, okay, so they better, however this is solved, it better have a major cost and a very unconventional route to get everyone their powers back, which could also involve a major status quo change for the DC universe. So really, there is just tons of potential for like just heavy, earth-shaking drama in this, and I am totally loving it. What I'm not liking as much is Green Arrow on Waller's team, mostly because I don't see the justification for it yet. As I commented, I believe it was last week, talking about the last issue of Green Arrow, Peacemaker showed Oliver Queen something on a tablet that changed everything for Ollie, and he says, okay, I didn't know, blah, 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 whatever he was seeing on the tablet, I'm with Waller now. And they made it clear to say, this isn't mind control. She doesn't have leverage on him, like she's threatening him or his loved ones in some way. She's got nothing on him. His mind has actually been convinced, we are to believe, and I think it would be a betrayal of readers to turn around and say, okay, actually Waller did have something on him. Actually, she was threatening to kill somebody. I think it's something else. I think his mind has been legitimately changed by some argument, some reasoning on the part of Waller. But they haven't shown us what that is. I'm wondering if the reason they haven't shown it to us yet is because the more time they give us as readers to think about it, the more we would poke holes in it and say, Ollie would have thought of this, Ollie would have done, because eventually Ollie is going to have to change his mind and come back to the community of heroes, or not. That would actually be awesome if for some reason he wasn't exactly a villain, but he was just not in the same crowd as heroes ever again. That has some drama and appeal to me all of a sudden. Just make him a darker, edgier, more morally gray kind of character. That could be really cool. I don't know. But yeah, he just says, I'm on Team Waller now, and we're coming for you. And it just seems like such a crazy about face that hasn't been justified. So I hope that I'm wrong, that when we find out the reason why his mind was changed, that it is not something that's easy for us after thinking for an hour to poke holes in, but it's actually has some real moral complexity to it where we could say, oh, I don't agree and I hopefully wouldn't make the same choice, but I can see how someone would, and maybe I would too. That's the kind of feeling I want to have when I find out what he saw on that tablet and understand his reasons for joining Waller. So they are setting my expectations by not telling me what's going on and what the reasons are, and we'll see if they deliver on that for me. Well, as far as ring selection this week, I'm going with the orange ring representing avarice or greed, or as it usually plays out in the comics with Larfleeze, just a great hunger for more. And that is, if you couldn't tell, totally what I'm feeling this week between JSA and Absolute Power #1. I'm just like, yes, this is totally the kind of feeling I like having when I'm reading comics, and I'm totally wanting more The next issues of both of those books couldn't come soon enough, and I imagine I will be more interested in some of these tie-in crossover titles than I normally would be, just because Absolute Power has gotten off to such a strong start for me. But anyway, I think those are all of my thoughts on comic books for now. As always, I would love to get your thoughts and reactions to the comics I've talked about, or maybe some that I didn't talk about this week. You can leave those in the comments below. And then I hope you'll check out christiangeekcentral.com. We've got a podcast there and tons more content for you as we continue to geek out and seek the truth. For more chat about geek entertainment, answers to your questions, and news from the wider world of Christian geekery, get the Christian Geek Central podcast today on iTunes and other podcast services.